Good afternoon, I have been mentally defiled. You know, I feel like there's still a lot of room for interesting discussion in the video game space. So, I sometimes sit in my ape cave, otherwise known as my gibbon lair, otherwise known as my chimp corner, and think about fun little topics to make videos over. That being said, a week or so ago, I wondered how many adult-only rated games existed. The answer is 27 officially, and I looked into all of them. And you know, I figured, hey, since I've soured my eye and ear balls looking at balls all week, why not share it with all of you? I was under the impression that there would be a decent amount of variety. There's not. But at least the games proved to be interesting. And for fun, I figured why not? I'll be giving you as best a review of them all without, you know, forfeiting my revenue to the YouTube overlords. So instead of a word you might expect, I think I'm going to censor myself with Donkey Kong. So, a sentence might sound like this. You stick your in there. Welcome to the euphemism, witticism, criticism of all these games that are bad for children. And me. These games are very bad for me. When the rating discussion for these games came up, ESRB must have looked at it all and said that they were bad influence games, probably prohibit. So many of these are simply about putting the X in the Y. But why, you may ask? Because as the old adage goes, sex sells. But less pithy and commonly said is gratuitous, senseless violence that goes a few steps too far sells as well. But in contrast, AO games do not sell well at all for a variety of reasons. Firstly, these games are ass, contain ass, and make an ass out of retailers who enjoy selling a product that people buy. The big hang-up with this rating and why so few AO games even exist is because firstly, the legal ramifications of the product are dubious, which makes actually giving the game to stores challenging, and secondly, the content isn't ripe with interest in a gaming space. Yes, people like the old pictures with intent for enjoyment concept, but the whole make a game around that, on the PS2, is just not a good model for financial gain. So, if you ever feel like a pointlessly redundant symbol that serves no real purpose and in fact sucks ass and isn't good for anything and is probably bad for business, just remember that adults only exists. Also, barely, as evidenced by this video where only 27 games of that rating have been released, and I get a chance to look at them all. Except I didn't, because I can't. We'll come to it when we do, but some of these games are only known to have existed but are so uncared for that they're impossible to locate. Beyond that, a lot of them are rare or hard to emulate, so I'm doing the best job that I can. Before we begin, I want to give a massive shout out to this week's sponsor. No one at all. So I booted up every single game with one hand behind my back, so to speak, and my large dong out, so to speak. In we go. That's a euphemism. First game up, and we have a fucking CDI game. Literally, as we are greeted with this title art of a guy taking a whiff of this woman's perfume. I find it funny that a console like the Philips CDI broke the ground on this very rare and taboo idea. I'm not sure why a floundering console would think it was wise to pick up a game that only like 25 people would buy was a good idea, but hey. This is an educational game, which is a stupid idea considering only adults could buy it. I'm not positive. Many adults have come home from a tough day and realized that they want to know more about how to have relations. Maybe a product on how to get a relationship going would sell better, but I tell you what, the first step to attract someone would probably be not buying the joy of sex for the Philips CDI. If I were dating someone who suggested I get dating advice from the console with the wand of Gamelon on it, I probably wouldn't be hanging around there anymore. So as the game is educational, it is not that interesting. It's all about what your partner wants, so to speak, you know, stuff you get demonetized for saying and showing. Put the yes in the uh-huh. Additionally, wouldn't you know it, getting this game to work is insanely annoying. Firstly, it's the CDI, so no one gives a shit. Secondly, it's the joy of sex, so refer to point 1. That means an uneducated emulator and computer-using man such as myself has remarkable difficulty getting it to work. From corrupted file types to outdated emulators, I just about gave up hope. But the good news is that I can watch footage of the game and get about the same information if I played it myself. It's basically a long pamphlet full of explicit information about various crotches.
Where Wendy's hid the real coins.
Crystal Fantasy exists inside the Library of Congress only. It's nowhere to be found or seen anywhere else. Why is this like a great conspiracy? Why is there only one copy of a game that got ESRB rated? There is nothing to show. I can't look at anything. I'm only sure that it's porn. I'm fairly positive I could request to buy a copy of the game from the Library of Congress for $100, but forget that. If you want to crowdsource me a big old Ben to look at a porn game for 30 minutes, up to 6 hours every other Saturday night, then that's a different story. But actually, after my research, I can offer a theory about this game in the next few. The publisher Mac Daddy Entertainment were responsible for 4 of the games on this list. It was almost impossible to locate information about any of them. Only one of the 4 were easier to locate and play, but but for Crystal Fantasy, All Nude Cyber, All Nude Glamour, and All Nude Nikki, I guess these have a theme now that I look at it, they were unplayable. I think they're VHS interactive movies, which is hilarious. The reason I'm led to believe this is I found a VHS tape specifically called All Nude Nikki, which is... Back in the day, games kinda came out for the VHS and DVD player, and you interacted with menus and stuff. So my guess is that you use a remote controller to... Now, the Wikipedia page does say the games were for Mac and Windows, but I can't be sure that's true. The citations for these games are very nothing, so I'm actually going to go with my theory. As for the Mac Daddy product that was actually findable... Again, getting these games to work, especially ones this old, is abysmal. Between the fact that I couldn't find a real version of it to it being exclusive for old versions of Windows, just playing this quote-unquote game was annoying. But I did actually get it working. Barely. This one had so much Donkey Kong necessity that I just need to describe the premise and move on. It's like a make-your-own adventure book, just replace the word adventure with a different word. If you want any idea what the game played like, go and find a 90s computer program that viewed either pictures or film, or if it just looks like Safecracker but the saves have been replaced with not saves for work. Next one. This is such a weird fucking game, I swear. Firstly, it's actually made by a lot of people. Secondly, it's big enough that people want it on GOG. Thirdly, it nearly gave my computer... I don't even know what to say. I know this much. It's strangely the most violent game so far. It's just you kill people as you feel the need. It's got a plot, but I can't be bothered to describe it. In fact, I feel like it'd be worse to describe it. You are an acclaimed actor, someone or other, and you're trying to save people, and there's bad acting and crazy amounts of random violence that's just way too over the top. Yeah, put it on GOG. Sounds good to me. Body language. Oh yeah, let's play some body language. This one actually was a DVD game, so it's just, you know, with button inputs. I don't know why you'd submit this to the ESRB. Just film your video and move on, but maybe the ploy was to be an interesting 1998 film game with a new raunchy rating or some shit, I don't know. The full title is actually called Erotic Heat Volume 4 Body Language, so whether there are 3 other games or the first 3 are not games, I don't know. I'm not that interested, and it's not findable anymore, so I couldn't actually see anything either. I could see plenty for the next game, though. Yeah, so again, strangely high amount of effort with this game. And by high amount of effort, I mean they hired people to make this. It's smut, you know, bouncing between 2D, 3D, and real-life animation, which is odd design. It's all bad. It's also literally impossible for me to show you much of anything. I'll just keep showing DK's face. In another bizarre twist, the game is an economy simulator with you trying to make more money. Trust me, it's nothing that interesting. In fact, I'm just so excited to get out of the dredge of adult entertainment and get back to the world of remarkably awful violence. Fun fact, this game won the 2000 Game Awards award for the game that makes no sense why you'd ever make it in any lifetime. Playboy magazine is a product that you use to do things, and it's very apt at those things, and there's no reason you'd really want a worse, digitized version of it that you'd have to pay more for in the year 2000. There is legit nothing to say. It's basically a catalog of photos that are probably better found elsewhere. I found an old-time review of the game, though. Get out the Windex, sick depraved fucks. Although, the final searing paragraph calling the game insipid and uninspired is pretty raw. I'm surprised this game got enough attention to warrant Mr. Writer to come out and get paid for an article, though. Moving on. Welcome to the year 2000. We have these devices called cell phones. I remember playing the game Snake on cell phones back in this time, very blocky and not good. So I can only imagine how great this must have looked. Let's be honest, no one emulated this, no one took a photo of it. I mean, it would be hard to take a photo of a phone, to be honest. For all intents and purposes, this doesn't exist. To be honest, this game couldn't be all that exciting. In fact, it was probably solitaire with a background, a far cry from everything else on this list. So farewell 2000 phone game that had an AO rating, it has been real. Eidos Interactive? That's actually a company of some note who eventually got bought by Square Enix. Isn't that weird? Yeah, so this is The Sims with one step further. Can now guess what that step is? Yeah, so I'll show you Sims footage. You live in a house, make decisions for your character, and finally you can... Game even got a sequel. Fancy that. Well, it sucks and no one liked it, so next. Okay, yeah, so here's a little change of pace. I take us out of the Western world and we zoom over to Japan, where the concept of games with nudity are more common. I will not be giving any sort of lesson regarding this because learning, reading, and experiencing all of this for this video has been a dogshit constellation of emotions that I can only represent with a... Honestly, Steam is swamped with games like this. Visual novels aren't always explicit, I think. I'm not sure actually, but they oftentimes are like these 5 games from Peach Princess. Honestly, playing any of these will give you the experience of the others. The funniest part to me was the installer has randomly genuine stuff about consent, respect, and all that. I was kind of impressed how human written that seemed. Now, I can't say why obviously, but this notification is hilarious considering what happens in these games. It's almost like someone had guilt working at the company and wanted to distance their opinions from the finished products. This is how I'll put it. Some of these were vanilla and some of these were very chocolate, if you do know what I mean. I was able to look at all 5 of these, and for the most part they all played the same. The game wouldn't run without music, and the music kept crashing, so it was a real fun process as I did nothing. But we are almost out of the dark ages, and soon the PS2 will be upon us, which actually almost means that these games are going to get less explicit. Here we are, the only AUG, or adult-only gambling game to exist, you know, besides regular gambling. I alluded to it earlier, but this is a strangely wholesome game. It was a conscious decision of the developers Peak to not market the game to adolescents to show they're concerned over underage gambling. Their full company name should have been Peak Chads for taking their potential profits and instead opting for the betterment of society. Moving on to the worsening of society. Yeah, so this is actually a game that's good and kickstarts Rockstar's appearances in the AO space. Everyone is familiar with the controversy here. The regular San Andreas is a definite M-rated game, but the inclusion of the hot coffee mod where you can gave this one a push over the edge to the adults only category. It's a remarkably small part of the experience and is honestly tamer than most of the other games. Leisure Suit Larry as a franchise predates every other game on this list by a lot and was always on the risque side of things. That being said, the series was primarily a satirical look at being overtly sexual and perverted, and the fun was in the constant stream of innuendo while also presenting the player with puzzle solving and adventuring. That is why the games were both financially successful and not thrown to the ESRB wolves, because they weren't that explicit. This game marked a reboot of sorts not involving the original developers, and it shows because it's now basically a stupid minigame simulator with displays of... In general, though, this game is far less offensive than some we've already covered. This game sucks, and it's popular enough to have been reviewed by actual reviewers. In general, this is very similar to Leisure Suit Larry, but it's actually somehow dumber. Any game that boasts that has bouncing boobs technology isn't gonna be good, you know? Also, it's ranked as Game Radar's 44th worst game of all time, so yeah, take it as you will. Oh, it's all blending together so much. I'm thankful for stupid-ass selling points to talk about, but we should keep moving on. Playboy, the mansion, private party, the shit game is a shit game that is a cross between The Sims and being Hugh Hefner. You manage the Playboy mansion and you might wonder what the primary audience for this game was. Again, if you're interested in simply going home and... I don't think you're going to buy a mansion building and maintenance simulator. It's underwhelming and stupid, full of polygons all over the place, disinteresting and not deserving of the expansion pack it received either, to be honest. Here's the next one. And finally, with a thunderous roar, we reach a game not made adult-only for its lewdness. Instead, we have pointless extreme violence to blame. By today's standards, Manhunt 2 is still pretty raw, but you'll find probably more insane depictions of violence in Mortal Kombat. Not to mention, while at the time this game was more up to snuff graphically, it's a long way down that rung today. I won't show anything, but it's not even that prohibited on YouTube. Although, if you're squeamish, the suggestion of violence are pretty off-putting. Let's get back to the wonderful world of butts and stuff you do with butts. So we're back to another visual novel, but it's far more tame compared to the other ones on this list. The game actually has censorship for the very extreme parts, so that's interesting. The game is a long narrative, and it's got a lot of that drama and interaction stuff going on. I've read later in the game is dark and more out there, but I must admit I didn't dedicate the time to play the whole thing. It wasn't that bad, but I don't know, I wouldn't break it out in my free time. Kinda underwhelming, maybe we are on the decline now. This game is almost identical to the last one, at least in the way that it's presented. It's a visual novel, except this time the sexual components have been added in later, so there are versions of this game that are big whatevers and then some that are more risque. And once again, I didn't play the whole game, forgive me, I'm daydreaming about being able to shower after these 27 experiences. Except for Peak Casino, that was great. But with 2 more before we're done, I feel optimistic we won't have much more weird stuff to talk about. Never mind. Hatred's premise is to kill literally everyone in your way. It's edgy, it's gritty, it's ridiculously over the top, and when a game is controversial for controversial's sake, I don't think it's that impressive to be shocking. And the game's on Steam, so that's interesting. If you really want an isometric game where you just shoot the shit out of things, then you'll be happy with Hatred. I'm not positive anyone is happy with Hatred, but it's a game that required active and competent development. In other words, it's at least a game. Hey, it's the final one. This is another visual novel kind of game, and it's lame that we're ending on this one. Although I'm happy, I'm greatly excited to stop looking at these things. I have little to say, or, going around chatting with women, playing a card game, getting the game pulled from Steam. In general, this is not too amazing. Overall, this walk down the perversions of the gaming industry has taught me some valuable lessons. Like, you should not make a game based entirely on how many times you can, or how many people you can, meanwhile, all over someone's... What I mean is you should probably just make Donkey Kong.